what I'm going to go over this morning is basically an old tune of mine, something that's way heavier on the drum and bass side, and how we can get it to be mega loud. I think this goes to about -6 LUFS, and still be really clear using Ozone 11. Chose this track because it is much heavier D&B, so we can sort of really crank it up, and it's got a reason to go that loud. It serves the music. As you know, I don't like smashing things that don't necessarily need it. So that's what we're going to look at. I've already gone over the project, save doing it live, but we'll look at how we got there and look at some of the things that work, so hopefully you guys can apply it to your stuff as well. Chat is obviously open. Any questions, cool beans. If the stream sucks for any reason, let me know. And I'm going to have to work in headphones. Cool. So, first things first, let's disable Violate. So we can just bypass the whole thing right here and hear some of what the original track sounded like and where we're working off of. I did this back in 2016. It hasn't got all the proper file naming and stuff that I tend to do now because I'm lazy, but we'll just do this build up into this section here, and that's pretty much the gist of the whole tune. Basically just evolves from there, different bass lines, different rhythms, you know, a real just hard hitting D&B tune, and we take it from this to this. A couple of other things to look out for in the tune. It starts off different. I made this with the idea of club playback. Ironically, it got playback in a gym chain for like 9 months and is actually, despite being a massive failure on Spotify, my most profitable tune ever. Starts off with a drum break, so it could be mixed in. So we do need to go back and pay attention to that master-wise. There's basically no breakdown. It just drops off in the middle for a bit. It has a little kind of moment. And structure wise, that's so you could use this first drop as a drop and then mix into something else if you wanted to, or you could let it run and then you've got a much longer section to mix out from here. So what do we do in terms of Ozone? I actually let the master assistant take control right from the offset, but then we changed a lot of things inside it. And the only thing that's really left as default from the mastering assistant is the dynamic EQ, but we did tweak that as well. So we'll look at that as we come up to it. In terms of this kind of wacky looking curve, I sort of discovered using this here, so our tonal balance curve. Inside Ozone, hopefully this is dipping my music enough that you can still hear me talk. When the tune is in, so around here, we were going a little bit overboard in the low end. I've just used that bit of EQ control there just to really control that. I used to have tonal balance open as a separate plugin, and now I can just switch to that view. I've just been doing that, I've found. So it's only a small dip. Look, we've got this dip taking out 1.3 dB, but then I've utilized the resonant high here to maintain the actual low end, because the lowest of low was still solid. I just needed to take out a bit here, and because it's in those whole long sections, I chose to just dip it out entirely. So it means we lose 1.5 dB in the breakdown sections, like here for example, but it doesn't matter because there's not really anything there. Like look, we've just got this bass that's swooping up. 1.5 dB adjustment's not going to make a difference, and it's not there for most of the time anyway. So yeah, I just EQ'd the whole thing out. We've got a real high-end lift, adding a little bit of shine. It just helped brighten it up a bit, and we'll look at the stabilizer and clarity. They're both giving a lift up in that end as well, which makes it a bit brighter. So that's it really for EQ. there's technically a boost here of 0.3 dB, but that was just leveling everything out. And then high end, that's it for EQ. Doesn't really do anything. It's left on analog, didn't need to do linear. I'm not doing like left and right or mid side independently, so it's not making any major phasing issues. Impact, if we switch delta on impact, it's not doing a massive amount. We're actually taking back the kick and snare, which had like these huge transients that pop through. Look, up a bit so I can hear it. It's not doing a massive amount here, but once it gets to say up here, this is what we're controlling, all those drum transients. If we disable it, we're going to get everything back. You can just hear what it's capturing there. It's barely touching here. It's this range here. It's doing the most, right? Really pressing those transients out in there. All that's doing is giving us a little bit more headroom for later when we want to lift the whole level up. Because this area here, as you can hear, is super aggressive, and I've got that kick and snare, they proper punch through, but we can take them back just a little bit, and we can see at the extreme, it's only like 1 dB, and we're okay getting away with that. So it's just bypass everything else apart from the EQ and impact, and they're making a tiny difference overall. We'll put game match on now, so it's going to be a lot quieter as we start to play. So, super subtle with the EQ. And then focus on the kick and the snare body with the impact. That littlest bit of control. Even if you look at the waveform, we can see we've got some extremes popping out there. That's what it's capturing, and just dialing those in. Could have done it with a multiband compressor. Impact's doing the really. Okay, so imager, quite a lot going on with imager. In the low end, I mixed the low end really well on this, so it actually, even though it sounds pretty wild and like properly spread, right, it actually super in the center. It looks wild on the oscilloscope, but its correlation is basically perfect the entire time, so I didn't need to do anything to it whatsoever. And even if we sum it to mono just over here, there's like no change. It's not an issue whatsoever, which is really good with having all that low end body. What I did find was quite nice if we spread out this area a little. And at times, correlation's going all the way down to 0. Generally, that's a bad thing and you want to avoid doing it. But if we sum it to mono, we're not actually losing anything of relevance in the track. And if we have the whole track summed to mono, everything's still there, even though I've spread these lower mids out quite a bit. So we're not losing anything in terms of summing to mono, but when I switch this back on, I love the effect of this. Really does add to the tune, but it's not taking anything away from it, and we've quality controlled in making sure that our low end correlation is absolutely fine. I've also then spread out a little bit those extreme highs that we've lifted up with the EQ. Just all that top end fuzz, just giving it a nice spread in the headphones there. Thank you, I appreciate it. It's an old tune. You can find it as Under's High Volume. I think it's on Spotify and everywhere else. Like I say, it was a massive flop on release. I think the only person who played this out and about was Smells, who is now in prison for 9 years. So that's concerning. But yeah, it got picked up by a gym chain to be played in their sessions that ran every 4 hours. So basically, like every 4 hours, it got played in like 30 or 40 gyms across the country, almost as good as like constant radio play, and it paid out really well for like 9 months. Yeah, it's the way things go. Massive flop as a release, but it had a use in the end, and like I say, most profitable tune. I've not used anything else in here, I don't think. I've done the recover sides at plus 3 dB, but to be honest, I think I just left it on because I couldn't hear a difference. Even in my headphones now, I don't pick that up. I said it. And what does the gap look like from the time you put the tune together to when mix down and master the track? Do you give your ears a break for a few days or not? That depends massively. Oh, actually, Phil, I've seen your comments before. Thank you for following the channel. That depends massively on the tune. If you look at my track, Trouble in the Hood, that's got like a 3-year gap in between where it was initially made and finally released. And that is an epic, epic flop, but I love that tune. I will, if I've written the track myself and only produced it and not worked with a singer, I will tend to try and leave like a week, maybe a month in between coming back to it, because I sometimes get to the point where I absolutely hate it if I've worked on it far too much. Sometimes like the track just falls out like within a week. Do Better, which is like, I'm still super happy with that tune even now. Started it on the Monday and I think it was mastered come like Thursday, Friday. It does vary. Sometimes I'm so sick of the tune, sometimes I need to be away from it for quite a while before I come back to master it. What I did for the album and an EP that I worked on with someone else a while ago was we got all the tunes ready. We didn't do anything with that project for a whole week, and then we came back to sit down and master it all in one go. It just lets you kind of forget the track that you've listened to 7,000 times already and try and be objective to it. Being objective to something you've worked on is super hard. If you can't do it, if you really can't just listen and go, this sucks, I need to improve this, change this, or maybe even go back to the mix, you kind of fall in love with your own work, get someone else to do the mastering. In the earlier days, if I rewind a decade, I couldn't have done that. Actually, I'm going to do a stream again later and we'll listen to some of my old tracks. I went onto SoundCloud the other day and realised I've got some of my super old stuff that I'd lost on there. I might play through some of those. Anyway, where were we at on this? Thanks for the question, Phil. Appreciate it. Clarity. Clarity is like this magic thing that's been added to Ozone 11. On this, it's not doing too much heavy lifting, but I will show the way I set it. So we've got the tune as is. Let's drop Clarity in. We can see it's doing some control around here, like that 500 to 1K, and that's because I've chosen to tilt it a little bit towards that mid-range, minus 1.2 dB. No worries, Phil. And the reason for that, if we go back again to here, we were lacking in this range here in the low mids. We still are even at this stage. There's no vocal or anything there. Clarity's just lifting that up. Now I absolutely could go back to like the EQ and put a big old boost in here like this. But that doesn't sound right to me. Now it would conform a bit better over here and we'd have to do even more of a boost and more saturation. To me it doesn't sound right. It doesn't matter to me because there's the big bass and there's the drums. That's all that's in this tune. It doesn't need that fully fleshed out sound. It still sounds balanced. Don't ever blindly trust this. It's a guide, not like a blindly follow it kind of thing. But yeah, Clarity is adding a bit more into there, and it did it in a much nicer way than a big EQ bump, right? Again, it's only adding like a dB, and it's doing it dynamically as well. Attack and release both set to 100, tilt it down, literally only 20%. Like if we jack this right up, it sounds absolute dog shit. Ugh. Just a little touch of it. It's nice. Right, and stabilizer is undoing all of that. I joke, but it's kind of, I've got it in cut mode, so it's finding out very specific small frequencies and subduing them. And it's also set to mid-side mode. So in Ozone up here, you have a Venn diagram at the top, and you can switch mid-side, transient. It's in mid-side mode, so it's only affecting the mids. It leaves the sides alone entirely. I think we'll check that in a sec. But it's in cut mode, and as you can see, it's actually very subtle, but it's cutting in just some key areas. This is really important for the loudness side of things. If you want to bring everything up and make it as loud as all holy hell, areas like this need to really be subdued, and the stabilizer lets us do that a lot. Now again, it's only taking out like as much as half a dB, but it's doing it dynamically in key areas. And because it's cutting out those key areas, we can get an extra like dB, half a dB of loudness and push the whole thing up overall because of what this is doing here. And then what the next part's doing, which is dynamic EQ. I left the sides alone if I remember rightly. It's on 11, it's pushing very slightly, but look at the control it's having on the sides, right? Mid. Low on the mid, I've touched a lot less. We've figured out that balance before and it is really nice. So there's a little bit of control happening there, but honestly it's, I can't even see it really on a meter. This goes down to 3 dB here, that would be 1 dB. It's maybe like a 0.1 of a decibel. I've made it super subtle. And the sides is controlling the spread up here, but it does nothing in the low end. Look, nothing at all. Even though it's set to 100, there's just nothing there. It's controlling that spread that we did earlier. So that's number one thing that allows us to get an extra couple of dB without it distorting and saturating. Now the next is the dynamic EQ. Now I said I used the assistant at the start. The reason is it finds resonant spots incredibly well, and it does it a lot faster than I could. So I might as well just use it and have that as set off straight away. Here we go. And here's my point. If I take this frequency here and we solo it out, pretty unpleasant kind of spot, and it's only being dynamically taken out at key points. Not like our EQ from before, where I've always got this cut in. It's dynamically doing it. It's only when it's in and a problem is it taking it away, right? And this one is just super harsh, and I've taken this out a lot more. That is not a nice sound, right? Now that not nice sound goes with everything else and seems fine until we crank the volume way up, and then that sound stands out higher than everything else. So here we're suppressing it quite a bit, pulling it down 3, maybe more dB when it's really present using dynamic EQ. Again, that means we can crush the volume another 2 to 3 dB before it starts sounding horrible and distorted and grating on your ears. Then done the same thing with the extreme highs. We're adding it all back in with the EQ at the start, and then we're actually taking it away when it becomes too much using the dynamic EQ. So it's there for the times it's not, it's been lifted up, but when it becomes too much, dynamic EQ pulls it back, and again, we can lift the whole volume up a bit more that way. As you can see in these sections, absolutely just suppressing the hell out of it. If we go to, say, our starting here, it's only touching it at the moments it needs to. It's not touching it at all right now, so we've got all that boost up the whole time. Hopefully that makes sense. So once we've done all those things, now we can get way more volume out of it than we could before. Hopefully I'm going to be able to prove that to you. I'm going to put both the vintage EQ and the maximizer on, and I've got the gain match on. We'll turn it off in a bit, so be warned. What have we left on? That on solo? No? Yeah. Okay. We're adding 11 dB of level in the maximizer. We're adding 2.7 dB of upward compression. We're then adding another 1.5 dB in the limiter. That's a shitload of gain. I'm going to turn gain match off. It's going to be super fucking loud, so if you've had this turned up, maybe dial it back a touch. And what I'm going to do is turn off the stabilizer and turn off the dynamic EQ. And this is going to be mega loud. And hopefully this demo translates, but it's not going to sound as good as when we put them back on. And you'll see why. loud. That top end bit we listened to before, you can see right here in the dynamic EQ, is harsh and grating, right? I've got this at a low level and it's caning me already. Bring these guys in, you can feel pretty much immediately that's tamed a bit more. Stabilizer exacerbates that a little bit further. It's not something that you can necessarily hear and instantly know that's way too loud, that's going in way too hard. But when you take it away, it's a more balanced mix and you can actually endure it at incredibly loud levels. If you put that on speakers in a club system, you've probably been in a club where you can just hear like that horrible grating white noise in your ear. Yeah, that's this area here happening too. We're suppressing it. I could suppress it even further, but that seemed to be about right. And then it's important the way we've set up the maximizer. So we're adding 11.1 dB. I don't know why I didn't stop at 11, but 11.1. Importantly, IRC4 transient was working best. If I was to put it to, say, IRC3 clipping, even more, and it just sounds weaker. Punchy, right? Being a transient version. And characters brought all the way down to transparent. We want it to feel as if there's almost a limit. I've only done a little bit of upward compress just because we now have it. There's not very much space in here to lift things up, but you can see it does it at key moments where we've got those big dip outs between the bass. It just tries to add that little bit in and just squish it in a little bit more, giving us some more level. Soft clip, super subtle, but just medium setting. Soft clip at just 3%. Let's just squish that bit more before we up into. I would argue, stop there, it sounds better without the soft clipping. I want to then go into the vintage limiter and get even more level using the modern and bring it down another dB and a half. It just has to kind of be there to work. And that, guys, for the most part is it. So the big things are the stabilizer in cut mode and the dynamic EQ cutting away those harsher frequencies, but dynamically, so only when they're actually in and an issue. And that allows us to get the extra chunk of gain without distorting the track. We could probably push this a little bit further, but it's -6 LUFS. We don't need to go any further and it's still super clear. One thing I didn't mention, I did on the EQ clear away anything low end wise, but look, it's beyond 20 Hertz. There is actually stuff down there in this track, I think. Yeah, I've got rid of that. That gives us a bit of headroom as well straight away. Yeah, that is pretty much it. If there are any more questions, I will happily answer them real quick. But otherwise, we're done. That covers what I wanted to cover today in today's stream. We'll just let the tune play out. Yeah, if we've got any questions, I'll answer them as we go. okay, snare cutting through on a 2-track mix. If you've got an issue with the snare not snapping through or not popping through, ideally go back to the mix stage. It's going to be really difficult to get it to pop out a little bit, but there are some things you can do. And we can add a second EQ on here, can't we? So let's add another EQ, and I will bring it down just before the maximizer. One thing you can do to isolate something like that out is use mid-side, right? So I'm just going to use EQ2 here. We'll go to mid-side, and we're just going to solo out the mid. It's basically going to give us a mono mix. I just went to +8 dB, so I hope my stream compressor saved your ears. So we just leave that in mid. What we can do in mid is find where that snare is going to live, right? Now we've got our frequency analyzer. I can see here that that's going to be my snare body, right? I could just go in the mid, quite a narrow boost. Boost that right up. That's going to make, I mean, the snare sticks out pretty well in this already. There's space for it. That's just going to help it really pop out. I would rather not do that, but if you needed to, it's an option. Now, in even just that like subtle boost makes a difference. Now with Ozone 11, we can take that kind of a step further if you've got advanced, because we've got the stem options. So switch that back like that. Another thing you could do is put in, where is dynamics? So once you've done that little boost like that, in dynamics you could do a really tight to go on your sides and it's almost like the opposite of de-essing. Go in and find snare body that you want to cut through. Press that super hard. Bring that right down. Give it stick out that way as well. That's now excessively loud, right? In terms of the snare, anyway. To prove my point, you can find it and lift it out. But since we have the option with Ozone 11, I'm going to put another ozone before this one. Ozone 11, add another one in. We've got our chain there, and then we should have a blank one before. What we can do here is grab the percussion, literally focus on the percussion stems. And we could manually tackle just drums this way. And we could literally do that same kind of boost. Go in a little bit harder, just the drums themselves. Try and make it stand out that way. Now you can hear it's taken pretty much everything else away. Mid-side it again as well. Off on the sides. Go back to the mid. Really like narrow it in ourselves like 3 dB again. Ideally I'd set ratios and attack and release and everything a little bit better. Now we're focusing on just the drums. We've given a boost to our snare in just the area of the snare. We're compressing just that area and lifting that section up. And we're doing that on just the drums. You could really go ham with this and put another chain in and do, say, the exciter. Do a split band with the exciter and find the snappiness of the snare. It's probably right around there, yeah? Somewhere between 1 and 3K. And just spank that with some saturation. Right, how hard's that snare hitting now? Now context of the whole track. That's actually quite nice, right? Proof of concept, we're going to bypass this. It's just affecting the drums and all that snare saturation. That's actually nice. I've way overdone it, but the snare's going to properly snap through when we switch this back on. Yeah. And that was without even really like tweaking any of the settings. If we did tape had loads of like high end and up a bit. Now there's loads and loads and loads of snare. You need Ozone 11 Advanced to get this kind of like level, but it's doable. It's doable, and it's just ridiculous how deep you can actually go with this now. You know, obviously I've just put 9 plugins all together to get to that point, and we're focusing on the drums and stuff you shouldn't be able to do in the master, but you can now. But yeah, that's the way I'd probably tackle it. And like what we've done there is actually kind of nice. I kind of like the result, I'm not going to lie. I would spend a bit more time tweaking it and I would dial it back. It's a little harsh for me. I imagine if we switch gain match off, that snare's actually going to blow my eyelids off. Let's find out. 3, 2, 1. I like it. I'm going away. I'd even be inclined to start taking it in that direction, even though it seemed like there was plenty of snare. Sweet. So that's that. Any more quezzies? If there is, I'll stay on for a bit, and if there's not, I will let it roll out. Most welcome, Mo. Thank you very much for watching. I don't do the please subscribe and smash the like button stuff generally. I just the reason my channel's grown so damn slow, I'm pretty sure. I can't be bothered to beg people for likes. I like to come in, try and drop something of use and then get off. I need to make some more hard D&B tunes. I've not done anything that's not soulful D&B for ages. Sweet. If that's all, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I will see you on the next one. If you can be around later, I might jump on and just have a look at some of my old tunes. It's just fun to listen back to them. I thought I might share some of it with you guys and listen to what I was making some 15 years ago. Now, one sec, I'll find you the link for the track. See if I can do it before the track finishes. When did it come out? God. There it is. 2016, forever ago. There you go. Peace. See you guys later.